Well, hi everyone. I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to follow Cheryl's presentation because that was amazing and I learned stuff in that one. So I'm so excited to take that back to my special education teachers on my campus. So I hope that you guys can get some new tips and tricks from this presentation. So for those of you that want to take the presentation and go back to it later so that you're not like having to take notes or anything, the bit.ly is on this screen. It will also be on my last slide. So yes, we are going to be talking about using Mote with our emerging bilingual students. That is the name that we have in our district. Not quite sure what y'all call it in yours, also known as ESL, ELL, but it's EBs now. My name is Amanda Hunt. I'm also known as the Next Gen Librarian. You can follow me on all the socials. And Mote is definitely one of my favorite tools in my educator toolbox to use. And let's just jump right into it. So, hey everyone, it's Amanda. I'm going to skip that one because I did embed a Mote, and it is an example of how I do my toilet talks with my teachers. And I just wanted to kind of put that in there as a way that you guys can see the benefits of how you can use Mote. I'm sure many of you watching this know how to use Mote, and so I'll kind of bounce through the directions kind of quickly. But I did want you guys to know that that is something you can embed in. I'm using Canva for this presentation, but I've done it with Google Slides and several other presentation tools. So you can insert Mote's auditory explanations when you're doing stuff for students in the classroom. And so you guys know that you can get Mote from the Chrome Web Store and you can install it. These are just ways that you guys can use voice comments. It's just the very basic of how you can use Mote in your classroom, in the library, and beyond with parents and students and staff. And then this just kind of goes over how you can use it with Google Classroom. Cheryl did a great job describing that one. We actually use Canvas in my district as our LMS, but we have used Google Classroom in the past, and it works well with Canvas as well, because a lot of the things I do with Google, I just put into Canvas. And it's really great and works great there too. So for when we're talking about our emerging bilingual students, I want to give you just a little bit of background on where I'm coming from. I am in South Central Texas, and it's about 4 hours from the U.S.-Mexico border. And so whenever I am talking about EBs on my campus, we are 100% Spanish is our second language, or is our first language, with English as their second language. And so for us, it is literally just working with one language, but I know that is not the case in many, many other schools across the nation, because we have students coming from all over the world to our schools. And I think it's great because we get to learn from them and them from us, right? So when we're talking about the benefits of using Mote with our EB students, it allows for personalized feedback, right? It allows you to convey tone and inflection in a way that sometimes comments can't. I am a real big, I use a lot of inflection in my voice. And so when I'm excited, kids know it that way. And so when I'm typing, I'm always like lots of exclamation points, lots of emojis, because I want them to know what I'm trying to get across in a very positive way. And sometimes you got to go extra on the comments. Whereas with my voice, they can really hear it and they can really sense, what I'm trying to say, and it can get across in a different way. When we're talking about language support with our EBs, and it's really interesting because so much of what we do with our emerging bilingual students, we should do with all of our students, because it's really just about giving them lots of different ways to learn the content that you're going over with them. And it can be visually, it can be auditory. And so we need to be learning for how we present the information for all of our students. So whenever I say this works great with EB students, it also can work great with any of your students on campus, right? There's nothing wrong with having things written out. It's nothing wrong with using your voice to talk and explain things. They're like all kids can benefit from different types of ways of learning. But for sure, with our EB students, hearing that feedback can help them with comprehension because in our state, every year in the spring, our EB students, poor babies, they have to take what is called the TELPAS test, where they have to listen, read, write, and speak 4 different exams. And it is a lot. And it is on top of our state tests that they have to take. So for them, they get this like few weeks window where they have to really, really do a lot. We ask so much of them and during that time. And so anytime they can hear things and respond to you or do it written is going to be good practice because they are going to have to do those tests in the state of Texas. And I think using voice comments for them can really reduce anxiety, right? Because a lot of times they're afraid to get up in front of and talk in front of the group. They're afraid to even talk to me in the library sometimes. And so whenever they have that voice comment that they can speak back to me, it's going to be a good thing because they're going to have the ability to do that on their own time, in their own home where they feel comfortable. And so they can really take their time with it and not feel like they have to rush or that they're going to get in trouble for saying something wrong. A lot of them have that fear, right? And then it encourages students to provide voice comments to their peers. We definitely use it in that way to foster a positive and inclusive learning environment. We want students talking to each other in a positive way to give feedback. It's definitely something that our district, we are a one-to-one iPad district, K to 12. And so these kids have had those iPads in their hands. I think this is our 14th year. Like we've really had it for a really long time. So the kids that are coming to me have been using iPads since they were 4 and 5 years old in the classroom. So they are very comfortable with it. They're very familiar with the tech side. But using those voice comments to talk to each other, especially since the pandemic, is hard for all of our kids, not just our emerging bilingual students, right? Because they are used to being in their room, doing work on their own in a very isolated environment. So when we brought them back into the classroom, we had to kind of teach them how to talk to each other, how to be positive, a lot of those social skills that they missed out on during that time. And like I said, with TELPAS, it's really important for those kids to practice those skills before they have to take that exam. So voice feedback is really powerful for our learned language or those that are learning the language because Mote does an amazing job of converting translating into different languages. It is actually super helpful. Last year, our ESL teacher on our campus did not speak Spanish, and all of her kids did, right? So it was a really tough language barrier for her. And so using Mote allowed her to be able to speak to them without knowing a lot of the language that she was trying to convey, right? And so it's really important for that piece. This year, our ESL teacher does speak Spanish. It's actually her first language. So I love that they have that in common and they're able to have those conversations together. These are some of the languages. It's more than 20, which is amazing to me. I'm not quite sure how Mote does this, but it's pretty awesome to see all the different ways that Mote can translate your voice memos. And I've had a lot of success with it. We use English and Spanish interchangeably on our campus. We teach Spanish 1, 2, and 3 on our campus as well. So my foreign language teachers absolutely love using Mote. So even my EB students, they are not the only ones using it. And so they don't feel like singled out in that way of using that particular extension because a lot of our kids that are taking Spanish as a foreign language are using it as well in the classrooms. So how can we use Mote with our EB accommodations in various subjects? So Mote has so many different features that are so great for our auditory users. And obviously when they translate it, you can read it. So it works across levels. And like I said, in our district, you have to be ESL certified to be hired. So every single teacher on our campus and in our district has that ESL certification on their certificate. So they have already gone through the training, they've taken the test to see what works with those kids. Because what works with our EB kids, like I said, works so well with so many of our other students. Repeating words, using different vocabulary, giving them a vocabulary list, offering the auditory piece to it. It's all so successful with all of our students. And so it's not something that we need to like we need to say, okay, EBs, this is just for you. No, that's not something that ever happens in our classroom. We are definitely making this a universal thing across the board, but they are getting those accommodations, which is amazing, because what some accommodations for our EB work with our special education population, that work with our gifted and talented population. So we are serving so many different types of students. But Mote allows it to be just something that can be universally used and be a positive for all of our kids. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the different subjects that you could use Mote and have some examples. I do have a link on where I got some of these because I am not a science and math person. As much as I love doing like STEM, STEAM, STREAM activities with kids, science and math are just not personally my jam. So I did have to kind of go and look out into the world and see what other teachers are doing. So I just love that some of these things can be translated with Mote, and you can use any type of G Suite a tool to embed Mote into, whether it's the speaking piece or the students are speaking to you for an answer. It has lots of different options. So with science, it could be something like describing a chemical reaction, and the kids have to say what they think might happen. Like it can be a great, you're making predictions, or they're actually having to actually tell you exactly what will happen when that chemical reaction occurs, right? So for math, it can be something where they are talking out the equation, they are listing it step by step, they are calculating, the perimeter of the room that they're in, or what have you, and they are able to say it with their voice, right? And for a lot of kids, writing is difficult. Like I said, we are an iPad district since they were little, so their writing skills can be a little low, right? And in the state of Texas, we took out cursive for a long time, and now it's back in as our some of our TEKs. So the handwriting skills are subpar with some of our kids. And now that we have our state test being done on technology, the kids are typing out their written responses. And so the writing skills have definitely gone down. The handwriting, the actually using a pencil and a pen. Now, a lot of kids have styluses, and so like that helps them a little bit. But being able to talk and speak out your answers shows learning and growth in the same way writing it does. So I think that's also very interesting and something to take note of with our students in this particular climate that we're living in right now, with technology the way that it is and everything like that. We need to take the student where they are and see how they can be most successful. So ELA is that's my heart. That's obviously who the teachers that I work the most with in the library. So definitely I've kind of talked with them about how they can use Mote in their classrooms to, like I said, talk out theories of books. They can do predictions and foreshadowing, and they can definitely discuss polarizing topics such as with Romeo and Juliet, what they think would happen. And so Mote allows them to kind of have those discussions as they're reading. Like if they assigned a chapter overnight, well, they're reading that at home, or they're reading it in a different class than they're in. So being able to have them talk out what they think is happening in the book, that kind of thing is definitely better for our emerging bilingual students than having them write it in some cases. Now they do have to practice that writing piece, but if you're just hoping for like a quick check for understanding, it can be a great tool to use in ELA as well. In social studies, they can speak the different countries and label them differently. And they can definitely work with vocabulary practice. There is so much vocabulary in our social studies from 6th, 7th, and 8th at the middle school level. Like sometimes it's like it's insane to me how much the kids have to learn for our state test, which is actually in 8th grade that they have to take social studies. So my 8th grade teachers really utilize this when they are doing their practice for their exam. We have health and speech on our campus. So obviously with speech, you'd be able to just talk into Mote and give a speech that way. A lot of our emerging bilingual students don't like to take speech, and it's really, it stinks because they do get a high school credit if they take health and speech when they're in 8th grade. That's the only grade we offer it, and then that way that's one less credit they have to do in high school. But a lot of my students are like, I don't want to talk in front of a whole group like that. So offering them to be able to record their speeches through Mote and upload to different documents is really, it's been really a game changer for my communications teacher. And she has tried to recruit a lot of our EB students to her class now that they know that there's an option. We are going to work with them to make them successful. And then with health, right? They can describe different parts of the body. They can talk about different ways to be healthy. My health teacher is a coach, right? And so he's always looking for different ways to make his life easier with all the different preps that he has. And so by offering the voice aspect of answering questions in his class has been so great for him because it helps him grading as well. And then like with music, we have band, we have choir, and we have theater also at the middle school level. And so for them to be able to record a clip of themselves singing, it saves my teacher time because we only have 45-minute classes. And if they need to hear every single kid in that room sing or play an instrument during that time, that's just not going to happen. So Mote has been a time saver for a lot of my elective teachers because they're able to give that to them as something they can do at home in the comfort of their own home, where they can really truly be themselves and share that without the fear of doing it in front of the teacher, in front of the class. Now, obviously, we're not trying to create students that only want to do that. But for our EB kids especially, they already have a fear of speaking in front of people. And it's a lot of it, it can come from a time that they had with their peers where it was an embarrassing moment, or maybe they had a teacher that made them feel like what they were saying isn't correct, or making them feel bad about having them talk in front of someone else. And I hate that for them, but it is something that they've lived with, a stigma coming to a country where they don't speak the language. We should not be making it harder for them, right? We need to be making it easier for them to learn and want to come to school and want to be in our classrooms. In the library, when I do book talks with students, I usually record like my face and I'm talking about a book because I use my hands a lot and I'm always very trying to be as expressive with my voice as I can to get the kids interested in the book that I'm talking about. But first, when I do it, I also make sure I'm recording my voice while that is going on. Or if you just recorded yourself visually, there are websites where you can change an MP4 into an MP3 for just the sound. And then you take that sound and you put it into Mote, right? And I make sure that my kids can get it translated into Spanish with what I'm saying. Now, also, I make sure whatever book I'm book talking, I also have a copy in Spanish, right? Because I do have a whole Spanish section of books that are popular that kids want to read. And if you are at a school that has a different language than Spanish, make sure that if you can, that you are supplying them with books that they can read in their native language, right? And like I said, we are 100% Spanish, but if you have an Arabic speaker or someone that is speaking French or any other language, do you have any books? And I don't mean books from like 40 years ago. I mean like new titles. And it's hard because publishers aren't always having it in different languages and things like that. So you want to make sure that you are offering something in their language and that it's actually something, if they're so excited about it, but it's only in English. Well, that's going to dissuade them from wanting to come to the library and get books from me, right? So I always make sure my displays are in different languages. Anything I send home, I'm able to translate with Mote, and I put those all in Canvas for parents and students to access because we really want to work on that accessibility piece with all of our kids. There's lots of different ways that you can use Mote, and I've linked these in here. Obviously, verbal rubrics. I love that. We have we are a district that does a lot of project-based learning, and that does include a lot of rubrics. And so having a verbal one is really great for our EB students, because then they understand exactly what's being expected of them when they translate that into Spanish. Live reactions to experiments. I sent this to my science teachers, and I'm excited to have them try it this year, because I think that would be really fun. And then response posts and virtual class discussions. If you are a teacher that does flipped classroom, meaning that you record the lesson, the kids do that for homework, and then when they come to class, that's when they actually work on the assignment, because they've already learned the content from you in a different way, right? It's really great because it can translate your lesson. Kids can get it on different levels. They can rewatch it in class sometimes if they're tired, if they just had a fight with their best friend. If they're not tuned in, they miss the whole thing. They're not going to understand the work that night, and there's no one at home to help them generally once you hit middle school. And so doing flipped classroom is awesome, especially for our EBs, because then in class, that's when you can sit with them and you can work with them and really get into the meat of the assignment and what they did and didn't understand. And then all these links are just different ways that I have used Mote in the past, and that I want to give credit to the people that I got the idea from. And so I've linked those in there. If you want to take a second to go through them later, feel free to do so, because a lot of these I have used with my staff, I've used with parents, and I've used with students and had a lot of success with. And so here's obviously just even more examples. Like you can see right here, this is one that we've used for Spanish. And you can use it with foreign language as well, not just with your EB students, but you can definitely record that, the assignment, and the kids can translate it and record it back to you, and record their answers. And podcasting is actually really taken off, and I definitely want my EB students to have that experience. I'd love for them to be able to record a podcasting in Spanish and have the translation for English for my other kids, so that maybe they can get a little bit of taste of what our EB students go through every day with not quite understanding everything that they're hearing and then having to have it translated. And I think that would be a really great way for us to show some empathy for those kids. And so I think that any way that you can include Mote with your EB kids is going to be a win. Like, honestly, it is a tool that has completely changed how I relate to these kids, how I instruct these kids, how I work with these kids. And so if you are someone that has emerging bilingual students on your campus, I am not their teacher, but as a librarian, I see those kids in the library. They come as a class, and I work with them, and I want to be able to relate to them, and I want them to see me as somebody who is trying to connect with them. And so using Mote has made the connection stronger between me and those kids in a way that it wouldn't normally. Now, I do speak some Spanish, so that helps, but I have many teachers on my campus that don't speak one word of Spanish, and they really struggle with those kids. Well, that's why I introduced Mote in my toilet talks. I introduced it in a whole class faculty meeting, and kind of blew their minds a little bit, because they weren't aware that this was something we could use with our kids. Definitely Mote aligns with our withISTE standards. So if you are a withISTE district, or you are a district that uses a lot of technology, it aligns perfectly with the empowered learner and the creative communicator, because those are the audiences that we are trying to reach. We are trying to reach, we are being creative, communicating with our EB students this way, and we're empowering them because we're giving them a voice when in the past they wouldn't have had one, right? Without Mote translating and offering those, written translation and taking what the kids are saying and translate into their language, that gives them a voice and it empowers them 100%. And then we use SAMR in my district, which is substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And it's where you take, it's the different levels of how you're using technology in your classroom, right? So if I just took a worksheet and I scanned it and put it in Canvas and sent it to my students, that's a very basic level, and it's substitution. And most of my teachers are not using that because we have been using the iPad for over a decade. We are very familiar with it. And so it's like we're trying to get to more modification and redefinition. And so these are just different ways that Mote can be in those different levels. It's also how my teachers get graded when they have walkthroughs from their administrator. And so they need to be able to show which level they're using technology when their administrator comes in and is giving them an evaluation. These are just other ways you can use Mote with all kids, and it's going to be beneficial for our EB students, our GT students, our special education kids, our students that have BIPs for behavior. It's all going to be positive because we are relating to them on their level with our voice. As annoying as it may sound to hear our voice over and over, it definitely, I think, gets the point across in a different way. So I love using Mote because I like to think, how can I be as creative with this as possible? But also, how can I have students connect with me in the library and with their teachers in their classroom? So this is the link to the presentation. Man, that was fast and furious. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm so excited that we have so many sessions that are happening about our language learners, because I feel like that is one of the giant benefits of Mote, is working with that population. So I am so excited to be able to be here today and to see the presenters that are after me, because I can always get new ideas when it comes to working with this particular population and how we can use Mote in the best way for our kids. So thank you so much for having me.